We have some breaking news today regarding the Philadelphia Eagles. They have promoted Kevin Patullo from passing game coordinator, in which he's served in that role the past few years, to offensive coordinator, with Kellen Moore going to the New Orleans Saints to be their head coach. Now, this has gotten quite the reaction from the fan base. A lot of people are upset. A lot of people are just kind of like, eh. And the reason for that is he's been within the organization for a few years, and a lot of people wanted some new blood, an external hire, for a few reasons. Number one is because they're scarred from the Brian Johnson era of 2023, and we all know how that worked out. But what people don't realize is Patullo has been with this team since Nick Sirianni took over. So although he was there for the Brian Johnson disaster, he was also there for the Shane Steichen year, which was very successful. So in that same vein, it's also going to be kind of hard to tell, what's his imprint on the offense, what's his imprint on the play design, and what's Nick Sirianni's, what's Jalen Hurts. And the reason for that is because he really doesn't have much experience outside of the Eagles. Now, he was with a few other teams. He was with the Colts with Sirianni. He was with the Jets, I believe, in 2015. But this isn't like Kellen Moore, where you could go look at his tape with Justin Herbert just last year and be like, okay, this is what he likes to run. If we see this, we know it's Kellen Moore. If we see that, we know it's Nick Sirianni. So I'm okay with the hire. I know Jalen was asked about it in the locker room when they were cleaning out their lockers, and he gave kind of like a bland answer, as he typically does. And people were freaking out about it. But I wouldn't read too much into that. I mean, knowing Jalen, Jesus Christ could come back down to life, and he would say something like, it's always nice to have one extra hater, or something like that. It doesn't really mean anything. He's never going to be over the moon about anything. But as for the direction of the offense, and I want to go back to kind of how it looked under Kellen Moore, I think a lot of Eagles fans are falling victim to recency bias lately. And I hate to say this about a coach who helped us win a Super Bowl, but Kellen Moore was, for the most part, not very good. He was better than Brian Johnson, which yet again isn't a high bar to clear, and that's not saying much, but it was good enough to win us a Super Bowl. But that being said, how many times do you remember watching an Eagles game this year and coming away with the conclusion like, wow, the passing game looked really good, right? I touched on this before. The sentiment most of the time was, this passing game is going to have to be better. Jalen Hurts is going to have to be better in order for this team to win a Super Bowl. But if you really dug deep into the tape, you could see it really wasn't a Jalen Hurts problem, and it was more of a Kellen Moore problem. For the same reason that Brian Johnson struggled. The only difference between Kellen Moore and Brian Johnson is Brian Johnson didn't use motion, and Brian Johnson was obsessed with the deep ball for no particular reason. Kellen Moore was different in those aspects, but one thing I didn't like about Kellen Moore is, the route concepts were stale and predictable, and it led to, a lot of bad performances that people wrongfully pointed out was, Jalen Hurts having a bad game, and he really wasn't. If you looked at the tape, there just really wasn't a lot of people open all the time, and that led to a lot of his bad sacks. Granted, he does need to get better at that. So, if you told me that the offense, was going to look like it did in the Commanders game, in the NFC Championship game, and even in the Super Bowl, although I thought the Super Bowl game plan was pretty simple. The Eagles just outcoached the Chiefs, and the Chiefs, specifically Steve Spagnuolo, made it very easy on Jalen Hurts to just kind of dice them up. But if you told me that the offense would look like it did in the Commanders, the NFC Championship game, that's my ideal offense. You had jet sweeps to Devontae. You had Jalen getting out on the move. You had play action. You had Saquon running the ball, but not just typical runs. You had him getting tosses. They were aggressive on fourth down, 4th and 5 at around midfield. That's my ideal offense. My number one thing that I want to see implemented next year is I want to see more underneath routes, and for Jalen to be encouraged to simply get rid of the ball. It's okay to dump it down to a running back for 3 yards. Now, I know they don't like to have Saquon as a receiving option as often because he's not a great receiver, and they also like to have him in as an extra blocker. But that's what I would like to see. I would like to see them just trust Jalen to throw the ball more, to be quite honest with you. I mean, he doesn't need to throw 50 times a game like Joe Burrow does, but there's no reason where he needs to be neutered like he has been in the past and this past year. What I envision the ceiling of this offense being, specifically the passing offense, is what the Lions look like this year. Now, I'm not asking for them to, put up 50 points a game and have all these trick plays and the wide receivers throwing passes. I really don't need any of that, but there should be more diversity to the offense, not just in terms of like who's catching the ball, who's running what routes, but just the route combinations. And unfortunately, if they struggle next year and don't achieve, that goal of putting together a good offense, it's going to be hard to pinpoint who is responsible because this isn't an external hire. This year when Kellen Moore did something, you could be like, okay, that was Kellen Moore. When you saw the play that we saw in the past, it's like, oh, that was a Nick Sirianni play. So we don't know. That being said, Jalen has worked with Patullo for a few years now. They both know what they like, what Jalen likes, what he doesn't like, and I'm just hoping that they run a better offense because that was the one thing holding him back this year, and that even when they won the Super Bowl, we all had questions about it. So making the offense even better would obviously increase the margin for error for this team substantially and make them that much better. And I already think they're the favorite for next year because I think they're stacked. But with that being said, we just got to wait and see. I mean, it's not a sexy hire. It's not a splashy hire. I know people have talked about Josh McCown, even Mike McCarthy potentially, and a few other guys. It seemed like they knew they wanted to hire Kevin Patullo right after, probably even before Kellen Moore officially got hired by the Saints. So we'll see how it works out. I'm sure there'll be more info leaked, what he likes to run, what he doesn't like to run. I'm sure he'll have a press conference eventually. I don't know. I know Lane Johnson tweeted out, like, let's go. That doesn't mean much, but we'll see. So that's that. NFL draft is quickly approaching. Free agency is quickly approaching. We're going to follow what the Eagles are doing, what they will do with their free agents. Is Zach Bond going to be back? Milton Williams, Josh Sweat. They got a lot of free agents coming up. But for now, I just wanted to hop on, talk about the hire of Kevin Patullo as offensive coordinator. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, hit that like button, comment, hit that thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. Do all that good stuff. I will see you next time.